Hello boys and girls, my name is White Rhino PSO and today I am playing One Deck Dungeon. Now this is actually the digital version of a physical card game that plays sort of like a dungeon crawler. The way it works is you get a number of dice based on what character you're playing, as well as any items that might be attached to that character. And then you use those dice to try and stop any of the effects that are caused by the enemies and the traps you encounter. Now, don't worry if that sounds a little confusing. Hopefully it will make more sense as we go. So let's start a brand new game. Alright, there are a number of different characters you can choose from, and each of them have their own stats and abilities. For example, let's take a look at the warrior. She has a 4 in strength, a 2 in agility, and a 1 in magic. Now those are the stats that determine what kind of dice and how many of each dice you get to roll during your encounters. She also has 6 health, which determines just how much damage you can take before the character dies. Each character also has a heroic feat, and for the warrior it is Frenzy. Roll any or all of your dice stored here, and you store a heroic dice here for each damage you take. You can store up to a maximum of 2. Heroic dice are kind of like a wild card in that they can generally always stand in for strength, agility, or magic dice during encounters. And the icons here show that it can be used during combat with enemies, during encounters with traps, but not against boss monsters, of which there is 1 per dungeon. Each character also has their own ability, and for the warrior it is when you descend, heal 2 damage. That is her second wind ability. The game does say that you can choose 1 or 2 heroes, and that's because technically the game is considered a 1 to 2 player game. But it is only a split-screen 2-player game on the single computer, which means most of the time, if you're choosing 2 heroes, it's because you just feel like playing as 2 characters at once. One thing you need to keep in mind, though, is that if you do decide to choose 2 characters, their stats are going to be lowered in order to keep a sort of balance going. For instance, if we look at the warrior while we have the rogue selected, now her strength is 3, her agility is 1, she has no magic, and her health is down to 4. And also, her heroic feat, now she can only store 1 dice at a time, and she has a different ability. Ignore 1 time, use before suffering consequences. That's not going to make sense right at the moment, but I'll explain how time works in just a minute. You also have to decide which dungeon you're going through. Each dungeon in the game draws from the same decks of encounters, but the dungeons are different in that you have different dungeon effects you have to deal with as you traverse them. The little dots underneath give you an approximation of how difficult that particular dungeon is. Even though the Dragon's Cave is considered probably the easiest dungeon, I checked the stats on the stat screen before I started recording this, and it turns out that people are only able to beat this dungeon 1 out of every 3 attempts. This is not a very easy game. Just like with the characters, you can right-click on the dungeons themselves in order to see the effects, as well as the dungeon monster, boss monster card itself. Neither of those are going to make much sense at the moment either. I'll explain those more when we get to them. You can also choose to start on different difficulties. Playing on Veteran is kind of like on normal mode in that you don't get any special bonuses to begin with. I figured that would be easiest to start off. And then you get to choose what kind of potion you want. That I'll explain in a second. There is also a sense of progression you can turn on or off. This, as you play the game, you're able to unlock different talents for particular characters. I believe it's a separate progression sheet for each character, and those talents will make future attempts at the game easier. For now, though, Well, there are some DLC characters you can buy just as standalone characters, like the Fanatic or Witch, but there is also a expansion pack that gives you the 5 more characters and 5 more dungeons, so it pretty much doubles the size of the base game. For now, though, I'm just going to play as the warrior in the Dragon's Cave with the standard potion, so this is the kind of experience you can expect if you buy the game itself. And now we are taken to the actual screen where the gameplay takes place, and already there's a bunch of stuff going on. At the top left, you can see the character I'm playing and their current stats. You can see their heroic feat, which if you mouse over, it shows you it larger so you can actually read it. And it shows you their current skill. At the bottom right, you can see their potions, which the way potions work in this game is a little different. You get a number of generic potion tokens, which you can see I have 1, and then those potions can be used for any of the potion effects that you currently have. The one you start off with is when you're outside of combat, you can heal 3 damage, or if you're inside an encounter with, I guess it's just combat or a trap, you can heal 2 damage. And there is also one thing that does not translate very well between the digital and physical versions of the game, and that is the timer. In the physical version, you had a deck of cards that would make up all the different encounters of the game, and that deck was also considered your time limit for that particular floor of the dungeon. So as you drew cards, you were eating through your time. Each turn also begins with you losing 2 time. So even though it's the same deck of cards, you probably won't be getting the same encounters each time you play just because of the number of cards that get eaten up as you go. Now, we're already down 7 because there's the 2 for the beginning of this turn, but also the Dragon's Cave, the effect for the first floor is Hall of Statues. Spend 5 time before your first turn on each floor. Well, that's the 7. Then you have to spend that first turn exploring the dungeon, because right now we don't have anywhere to go. So you explore the dungeon, and it takes 4 cards, well, as many cards as you have unexplored doorways, and then fills them with now unexplored doors. And then another 2 turns because another turn has passed. So then you have to choose which of these 4 doors you want to explore first. So no reason why not to go for the top left. Alright, so our first encounter is a combat encounter. Just ignore the potential loot at the moment. Well, I mean, I guess I can explain it. Each time you get into an encounter, whether it's with an enemy or with a trap, the game will show you what the potential loot is for defeating it. You can take your treasure as an item, a skill, or as experience. If I took it as an item, this would give me 1 extra strength. If I took it as a skill, it would give me another ability, which this one, you spend 1 dexterity or 1 agility dice to gain a agility dice with the number 6 on it, which is very helpful. Or you can spend it, or you can take the treasure as experience. You can level up. Yes, you can actually see the character. You start off with level 1. You can hold 1 item. You can have 2 skills, though your starting character skill does not count toward that limit. You start off with 1 potion, and you don't get any special dice. Once you gain the 6 experience required to level up, you become level 2. Which means you have 3 total items, 3 skills, you get another potion just for reaching level 2, and now in any encounter you get 1 heroic dice. Getting to level 2 is very, very helpful. On the easiest difficulty of the game, like I chose Veteran, so it was just straight from 0, the easiest difficulty of the game starts you at level 2, so you automatically get that heroic dice per encounter. But right now, we are level 1. Alright, so this is the enemy card itself. Some enemies have an effect. For one, this one is Drain. Before the encounter, convert one item to experience. I don't have any items at the moment, so that's not really going to affect us. But now you can see the different boxes on that enemy card. These determine the different effects that you have to stop, for lack of a better explanation. For the hell of it, I'm just going to enter because it seems mostly combat with a little bit of magic. We're actually... I might be able to do this. Alright, so at any time you can back out, but you can hit flee, and then it just brings you back to the area with the 4 doorways, and then a new turn begins. Or you can enter to fight. So, she has 4 strength, 2 agility, and 1 magic, which determine the dice I'm allowed to roll. Oh, and I rolled poorly. Okay. So, the different boxes. The long boxes you can put more than 1 dice into, which obviously you generally have to because it's got the number 9. There is actually no way I can beat this particular enemy. Any box with a heart will cause damage. Any box with an hourglass will take time. And any box with a shield has to be covered. You have to put a die into it before you can put dice anywhere else. You can survive any encounter. You're not really defeating the enemy, you're more surviving the encounter. So, in reality, this was not a good encounter for me to go for, simply because I have no good way of covering up that 9. I don't think, at least. Another way to get heroic dice is you can put any 2 dice into this thing here, and say I put a 1 and a 3, well, that will give me a heroic dice with the number 1 on it, which I'm going to do it. Shit. I need to put that there. That'll give me a 1, which is not very helpful at all. Yeah, there's no way I can, even if I use all of my remaining dice, I can't cover up that shield, so I'm gonna take, you can see the consequences down here. I'm gonna take 4 damage to my health and 3 time damage, I guess you could say. But there's not really much else I can do. I am gonna get 2 heroic dice for taking damage, though. And God, that hurt really bad. So, whether or not you cover all the boxes, you still get the loot at the very end. Which, like I said, you can choose to take as an item, as a skill, or as experience. So, say if you take it as an item, you can then replace that item later, and then you still get the experience. So, you're not really choosing one effect and have to live with it. I believe I'm going to take the skill, though, because being able to trade any 1 agility dice for an agility 6 is a very useful thing. One other thing I forgot to mention. The Dragon's Cave... Oh, nice. It lets you see the whole card. So, I'm on floor 1, which means the Hall of Statues. But it also means that there are different effects that are added into any combat or trap encounter. For instance, any combat encounter gets this extra box, which is a 3 strength that will do 1 damage if I don't cover it. Every trap encounter will get a 2 with a shield in it, which means I have to cover that 2 before I can cover non-shielded boxes. Now you can see I've got 3 doors left, and one of them is a torch. I can spend a turn by clicking on that torch, and then it will give me another door. So you can explore for however many empty doorways there are. Next up is... okay, now good, we have a trap. So traps have the same sort of potential loot situation, which Cleave is an extremely good skill. For spending one strength die, you get to increase up to 4 dice by 1. That's one that I have enjoyed quite a bit. Now, traps work slightly differently. Traps will always have 2 different ways to deal with it. For this one, it's either clobber the logs, which in itself will take 2 time, or dodge the logs, which takes no time. These are the different boxes you have to fill, and you get to choose between, well, am I going to go after this with combat, or am I going to go after it with agility? You're only allowed to roll as many dice of that particular type as you have. So for me, it would be a lot better, a lot safer to go after clobber the logs because I've got a 4 in combat. So I'm going to enter and then choose which of them to do. So I immediately lose the 2 time. I can choose now if I want to use any of the 2 heroic dice that I have stored up, but I'm fairly sure that I can easily get a 10 on 4 dice. So I'm going to skip that. I roll my strength dice, and I got a lot better this time. Alright, so remember the Dragon's Cave adds a 2 with a shield. Now those are gray because they just become whatever kind of trap skill you're going after. So that's why it's a 2 with a strength die. So I'll use the 4 to cover that, and then the 6 and the 5 to fully cover that. And now you can see the consequences. I am not going to take any more time or damage as part of this encounter. So now I go straight to the loot, and I would really like that cleave. But now I am at the limit of what my level allows for me. Well, at least as far as skills go. I've got the 2 skills plus the one that's inherent as part of playing the warrior. Right, next door up gets another combat encounter, and this one is heavily focused on strength and agility. Let's see, brute force. The little circle of arrows mean that this can be used at any time. Discard any number of value 5 dice, and then I gain that many value 6 strength dice. That does not seem overly useful. The item would give me 1 to magic and another health, which would be good. The experience would put me more than halfway to level 2, which would be good. I think I am going to give this a shot just because I've got the 2 heroic and all these other dice lined up. And I am going to roll all of them. So those get rolled first. The 2's not super helpful, but the 5 will. Alright, this... now it's going to be... I don't really want to use that one, just because I've already got an agility 6. Wait a minute. I'll hold off on that, but I will use a 1 to give me cleave. Alright, so I'll put that up to a 6. I don't really want to do anything with that 4. I guess I'll go like that. Shit, I probably should have done something with the 1, because now the 1 can't really do much. Anyway, there are no shields, which means I can put any of these dice anywhere. I'll put... you also have to see what effects are coming, so you can decide Well, what is easier to deal with? 1 damage in 1 time or 3 damage? Damage in a time. I want to try and cover up that as quickly as possible. Put there and there. I might have to use my potion. Maybe not. Yeah, alright. So I don't want to use the 4 because I have time to spare. The 4 of agility. So I can throw that. And that in there to get a 4 here. Go like that. Cover that. And cover that. Now, I'm still going to be taking 4 damage in 2 time. Which... that would still kill me, so I am going to have to use my potion. It's always better to use the potion between encounters, just because you get 3 damage instead of 2. But I am going to use that. Oh, shit. I'm still going to take enough damage to die. Is there any way to stop that? That's 3... Huh. Yeah, there is no current way for me to survive this. Shit. Well, I can't do anything with that, because that would just give me a 6 instead of a 5. But yeah, I'm still taking 1 there, 1 there, 1 there. Actually... there we go. Okay. Yeah, moving the 3 over to here means I don't take the 2, instead I take a 1. So I'm still taking 3. Which gives me another 2 heroic, but also takes time. And I, right now, need health. Yeah, so now I've got 1 item... which if you click there, it'll show you the item, which it is worth 4 experience, but also 1 magic and 1 health, which brings me up to magic of 2 and health of 7, which is going to keep me alive for at least a little while longer. But now I am over the time for my usual limit of video, so as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.